chap goes into a bar and orders a vodka and coke. The barman serves him, man drinks it, orders another. This goes on for a while, until the chap begins to slow down. Barman asks, "Is there anything the matter, sir?" Chap replies, "I had an enormous argument with the wife. She said she won't speak to me for a month. I have to sleep on the sofa." The barman says, "Best bet is to stop drinking, go home, and don't let this argument carry on past the first night. Nip it in the bud." Chap says, "You don't understand. This is the last night."
Clyde, sitting at the bar with Mark and Kevin, tells them, "Last night while I was here drinking with y'all, a burglar broke into my house." Kevin asked, "Did he get anything?" "Yeah," Clyde said, "a broken jaw, 6 teeth knocked out, and a foot in the family jewels. My wife thought it was me coming home drunk again." So a blonde goes to a lying competition. The goal of the competition is to tell the most convincing, outrageous lie. The blonde thinks for days and days over what lie she is going to tell, but she is never able to come up with a good one. She approaches the microphone, grasping for any idea, and stares at the crowd. Let me think about this," she mutters to herself. The crowd breaks into cheers and applause. Confetti falls from the sky, and the judge walks up to her and gives her the first place award. A man came home just in time to find his wife in bed with another man. So he dragged the man to the shed and put his penis in a vise. He secured it tightly, superglued it shut, removed the handle, and picked up a hacksaw. The man, terrified, screamed, "Stop! Stop! You're not going to cut it off, are you?" The husband said, "No, you are. I'm setting the shed on fire." Johnny was riding on a bus and wouldn't stop talking. "If my dad were a lion and my mom a lioness, I'd be a lion cub. If my dad were a horse and my mom a mare, I'd be a foal. If my dad were a king and my mom a queen, I'd be a prince." The bus driver got fed up with Johnny's non-stop chatter. He walked over angrily and said, "Hey, Johnny, be quiet. You're driving me crazy. Just answer one last question." Johnny replied calmly, "Go ahead." The driver snapped, "If your father were lazy and a drunk and your mother were always fighting and ignorant, then what would you be?" Johnny smiled and said, "Then I'd definitely be a bus driver." A student comes to a young professor's office hours. She glances down the hall, closes his door, kneels pleadingly. "I would do anything to pass this exam." She leans closer to him, flips back her hair, gazes meaningfully into his eyes. "I mean," she whispers, "I would do anything." He returns her gaze. "Anything? Anything?" His voice softens. "Anything? Anything?" His voice turns to a whisper. "Would you study?" A 75-year-old man walked into a crowded waiting room and approached the desk. The receptionist said, "Yes, sir, what are you seeing the doctor for today?" "There's something wrong with my d," he replied. The receptionist became irritated and said, "You shouldn't come into a crowded waiting room and say things like that." "Why not? You asked me what was wrong and I told you," he said. The receptionist replied, "Now you've caused some embarrassment in this room full of people. You should have said there is something wrong with your ear or something and discussed the problem further with the doctor in private." The man replied, "You shouldn't ask people questions in a room full of strangers if the answer could embarrass anyone." The man walked out, waited several minutes, and then re-entered. The receptionist smiled smugly and asked, "Yes, there's something wrong with my ear," he stated. The receptionist nodded approvingly and smiled, knowing he had taken her advice. "And what is wrong with your ear, sir?" "I can't piss out of it," he replied. The waiting room erupted in laughter. Once there was a man named Brother Samuel who suddenly decided he wanted to learn English so he could impress people in his church neighborhood. So he went to a local teacher and said, "Teacher, please teach me such powerful English that when I speak, everyone will be amazed." After trying for 3 days, the teacher realized that Brother Samuel wasn't understanding anything at all. Finally, frustrated, the teacher said, "Brother Samuel, just memorize 3 sentences. That will be enough for you." "Yes, why not?" "Because of money." "Very good, very good." Brother Samuel memorized these 3 sentences perfectly. The next day he walked proudly through the streets, chest out, hoping someone would hear his new English. Coincidentally, that same night there had been a robbery in the neighborhood and the thief had escaped. The inspector arrived and saw Brother Samuel wandering nearby. The inspector stopped him and asked, "Did you commit this robbery?" Brother Samuel proudly replied, "Yes, why not?" The inspector was shocked. "What? You're admitting it?" He angrily asked, "Why would you do such a thing?" Brother Samuel smiled confidently and said, "Because of money." Now the inspector was furious. He turned to the officer and said, "Take this man to the station and give him 50 lashes." Hearing this, Brother Samuel happily clapped his hands and said, "Very good, very good." An Irish radio station was running a competition. Words that weren't in the dictionary yet could still be used in a sentence that would make logical sense. The prize was a trip to Bali. 96 FM here. What's your name? Hi, my name's Dave. Dave, what's your word? Goin, spelt G-O-A-N, pronounced goin. You are correct, Dave. Goin is not in the dictionary. Now, for a trip to Bali. What sentence can you use that word in that would make sense? Go and f*** yourself. The DJ cut the caller off and took other calls, all unsuccessful until 96 FM, what's your name? Hi, me name's Jeff. Jeff, what's your word? Smee, spelled S-M-E-E, pronounced smee. You are correct, Jeff. Smee is not in the dictionary. Now, for a trip to Bali, what sentence can you use that word in that would make sense? Smee again, go and f*** yourself. An Irishman walks into a bar in London one lunchtime and orders 3 pints of Guinness. He takes them off to a table and starts drinking them, a sip at a time from each in sequence. It's unusual, but the barman's busy and doesn't ask. But the Irishman returns at lunch the next day and does the same thing. And this goes on for a week before the barman eventually asks, "So, what's with the 3 pints?" The Irishman replies, "Simple. I have a brother back home in Dublin and another in New York, and we all promised we'd drink like this, as a way of staying close and keeping each other in mind, you know." Which satisfies the barman. Anyway, the days become weeks and months, the Irishman becomes a regular, and everyone knows and loves him. The ritual becomes a part of the pub's folklore. One lunchtime, the Irishman comes in and orders 2 pints of Guinness. Silence descends on the pub as the Irishman takes his pints to his table. The barman, awkward as all but feeling like he has to say something, comes over to the Irishman and says, "Listen, Paddy, I just wanted to say, we're all so sorry for your loss, and if there's anything we can do to, help or anything." The Irishman looks up at the barman, his face a mask of incomprehension, until suddenly understanding hits him and he starts laughing. "What? You thought, oh, come on, man, it's nothing like that. I just quit drinking." A Scouser was touring the USA on holiday and stopped in a remote bar in the hills of Nevada. He was chatting to the bartender when he spied an old Indian sitting in the corner. He had tribal gear on, long white plates, a wrinkled face. "Who's he?" asked the Scouser. "That's the memory man," said the bartender. "He knows everything, remembers everything. He can remember any fact he experiences. Go and try him out." So the Scouser goes over and, thinking he won't know about English football, asks, "Who won the 1965 FA Cup final?" "Liverpool," replies the memory man. "Who did they beat?" "Leeds," was the instant reply. "And the score?" 2-1. "Who scored the winning goal?" "Ian St. John," was the old man's reply, without a hint of hesitation. The Scouser was knocked out by this and told everyone back home about the memory man when he got back. A few years later, he went back to the USA and tried to find the impressive memory man. Eventually, he found the bar, and sitting in the same seat was the old Indian, only this time he was older and even more wrinkled. Because he was so impressed, the Scouser decided to greet the Indian in his native tongue. He approached him with the greeting, "How?" The memory man looked up and replied, "Diving header in the 6-yard box."
A guy gets home from work, plops down on the couch, and says to his mother-in-law, "Hey, Mom, be a dear and run down to the corner store to grab me a 6-pack. "Excuse me," she snaps. "I'm not your maid. I'm not fetching you beer. Never in a million years." "Come on, the convenience store is just around the block. I'll give you a $20 bill, buy the beer, and you can keep whatever's left." The mother-in-law thinks about it. Hey, free money is free money, she figures, and heads out. The guy finishes his beer, and a little while later, he calls out again, "Mom, I could really use something a little stronger now. How about a bottle of vodka?" "Oh, absolutely not. Now you want me fetching hard liquor? Do it yourself." "Store's still in the same place. I'll give you a $50 bill. Buy the vodka, keep the change." She hesitates, but greed wins over pride. She rolls her eyes, grabs the 50, and heads back out. He barely finishes his drink when he yells out again, "Hey, Mom, how about I smack you right on the forehead with this house slipper, huh?" The mother-in-law turns bright red, ready to scream and tear his head off, but she instantly bites her tongue when the guy slaps a crisp $100 bill on the coffee table. Whack! He smacks her on the forehead with the slipper. The mother-in-law snatches the 100 and scurries into the kitchen to count her easy cash. Right at that exact moment, the guy's phone rings. It's his wife. "Hey, honey," his wife asks, "did you give my mom her Social Security money yet?" "Yep," the guy replies. "I'm just giving it to her in installments."
A bear walks into a bar. The bartender is extremely busy and looks tired. He eventually makes his way over to the bear. The bear immediately tells him, "You look exhausted." "Yeah, it's been a rough day," says the bartender. "What are you drinking?" "I'll have a glass of," says the bear. He waits a painfully long moment before adding, "Scotch." "Why the long face?" asks the bartender. "Don't you mean big paws?" asks the bear. "Yeah, sorry," sighs the bartender. "Like I said, it's been a rough day." A famed English explorer was invited to Dartmouth to tell of his adventures in the African jungle. Can you imagine a people so primitive that they love to eat the embryo of certain birds and slices from the belly of certain animals, and grind up grass seed, make it into paste, burn it over a fire, then smear it with a greasy mess they extract from the mammary fluid of certain other animals? When the students looked startled by such barbarism, the explorer added softly, "What I've been describing, of course, is a breakfast of bacon and eggs and buttered toast." 3 women, a blonde, a redhead, and a brunette, are lost in the forest while hunting. They each have a shotgun with 2 bullets. They make a fire. Then the redhead gets up and goes hunting. She comes back with 2 rabbits. The other 2 say, "Wow, where did you get that?" She says, "I found tracks. I followed the tracks. I saw rabbits. Rabbits ran. I shot. Rabbits stopped." Then the brunette leaves and comes back with a deer. The other 2 say, "Wow, where did you get that?" She says, I found tracks. I followed the tracks. I saw a deer. The deer ran. I shot. Deer stopped. The blonde leaves and comes crawling back, all bloodied and black and blue. The other she
"Mister, why doesn't this cow have any horns?" asked the young lady from a nearby city. The farmer cocked his head for a moment, then began in a patient tone. "Well, ma'am, cattle can do a powerful lot of damage with horns. Sometimes we keep 'em trimmed down with a hacksaw. Other times we can fix up the young'uns by putting a couple drops of acid where their horns would grow in, and that stops 'em cold. Still, there's some breeds of cattle that never grow horns. But the reason this cow don't have any horns, ma'am, is 'cause it's a horse."
A British soldier returns from war after 4 years against the Germans. His faithful wife, longing for all these years, dresses up in her sheerest lingerie, hoping to entice her returning husband. She waits by the door as her husband enters, and her lingerie gently slips off her body, and she stands there naked. "Darling, look what the wind blew away," she says seductively. The husband, looking sad and dejected, drops his pants and says, "Sweetheart, look what the Germans blew away."
A soldier approaches a nun. "I don't want to be rude, but can I please hide under your dress? I'll explain later," said the man. "Go ahead," answered the nun. 2 high-ranked army officers walk up and ask the nun, "Have you, by any coincidence, seen a soldier?" After the officers disappear, the soldier leaves the dress and says, "Thank you so much. I don't want to go to Afghanistan. My apologies, but I gotta say that you have a nice pair of legs." The nun responded, "Should have looked higher. You would have seen the nicest pair of balls. I also don't want to go to Afghanistan." A 78-year-old man went for his yearly medical checkup. After a few tests, the doctor smiled and said, "For someone your age, you're in remarkably good shape." The old man nodded proudly. "That's because I live a clean, honest, spiritual life." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? And what makes you so sure about that?" The man leaned closer and said, "Well, every night when I get up to use the bathroom, the Lord turns the light on for me." The doctor looked surprised. "You're saying the Lord turns the light on for you?" "Absolutely," the old man replied. "Every single night." Later that day, the man's wife came in for her appointment. The doctor said carefully, "Your husband seems physically healthy, but he told me something a little unusual. He says that every time he gets up at night to use the bathroom, the Lord turns the light on for him." The wife stared at him for a moment and then shouted, "Wait, so that's who's been peeing in the refrigerator." Once, an old Christian woman went to the largest bank in the city. She walked up to the bank manager and said politely, "Sir, I would like to deposit some money into my account." The manager asked, "How much money are we talking about?" The old woman replied calmly, "About $1 million." The manager was surprised and said, "Wow, that's a lot of money. What do you do for a living?" The old woman smiled and said, "I make money by winning bets." The manager laughed. "You mean you earned all this money just by betting?" She nodded and said, "Yes. And if you don't believe me, we can make a $100,000 bet right now. I bet that you are wearing a wig." The manager immediately said, "No way. These are my real hair. I'm not that old." The old woman replied calmly, "Well then, let's bet $100,000. The manager thought to himself that the old lady must be a little crazy, and he would easily win the money, so he agreed. The old woman then said, "Since this is a $100,000 bet, tomorrow I will bring my lawyer with me so everything happens properly and no one denies it later." That night, the manager couldn't sleep at all. He kept thinking about the bet and the money. The next morning, the old woman returned to the bank with her lawyer. All three of them sat down in the manager's office. The old woman asked, "Are you ready?" The manager said confidently, "Yes, I'm ready." The old woman then said, "To be completely sure, I would like to pull your hair and check, since $100,000 is at stake." The manager agreed. "All right, go ahead." So the old woman started pulling his hair to check. Suddenly, the lawyer began banging his head against the wall. The manager looked shocked and asked, "Sir, what's wrong with you?" The lawyer groaned and said, "This old woman bet me $500,000 that today she would pull the hair of the manager of the biggest bank in the city." Then he sighed and said, "And now I just lost the bet." Bob tells his buddy, "My girlfriend's bottom smells like roses." His buddy says, "That's incredible. You're really lucky." And Bob says, "Yeah, but Rose has bigger breasts." The other day, my blonde neighbor came running up to me in the driveway, jumping for joy. I didn't know why she was jumping so excitedly, but I thought, what the heck? And I started jumping up and down along with her. She said, "I have some really great news." I said, "Great. Tell me why you're so happy." She stopped jumping and breathing heavily from all the jumping up and down and told me that she was pregnant. I knew she'd been trying for a while, so I told her, "That's great. I couldn't be happier for you." Then she said, "There's more." I asked, "What do you mean there's more?" She said, "Well, we are not having just one baby. We are going to have twins." Amazed at how she could know so soon after getting pregnant, I asked her how she knew. She said, "Well, that was the easy part. I went to Walmart and they actually had a home pregnancy kit in a twin pack. Both tests came out positive." The policeman had stopped the man for obvious drunken driving, but since the guy had a clean record, he made him park the car and took him home in the patrol car. "Are you sure this is your house?" the cop asked as they drove into a rather fashionable neighborhood. "Certainly," said the drunk, "and if you'll just open the door for me, I can prove it to you." Entering the living room, he said, "You see that piano? That's mine. You see that giant television set? That's mine too. Now follow me." The police officer followed the man as he shakily negotiated the stairs to the second floor. The drunk pushed open the first door they came to. "This is my bedroom," he announced. "See the bed there? That's mine. See that woman lying in the bed? That's my wife. And see that guy lying next to her?" "Yeah," the cop replied suspiciously, beginning at this point to seriously doubt the man's story. Little Billy and Lucy are only 12 years old, but they know they are in love. One day they decide that they want to get married. Billy bravely walks up to him and says, "Mr. Smith, me and Lucy are in love. I want to ask you for her hand in marriage." Thinking that this was just the cutest thing, Mr. Smith replies, "Well, Billy, you're only 12. Where will you two live?" Without even taking a moment to think about it, Billy replies, "In Lucy's room. It's bigger than mine. We can both fit there nicely." Still thinking this is just adorable, Mr. Smith says with a huge grin, "Okay, then how will you live? You're not old enough to get a job. You'll need to support Lucy." Again, Billy instantly replies, "Our pocket money. Lucy gets $5 a week and I get $8. That's about $52 a month, so that should do us just fine." Mr. Smith is impressed Billy has put so much thought into this. "Well, Billy, it seems like you have everything worked out. I just have one more question. What will you do if the two of you should have little children of your own?" Billy just shrugs his shoulders and says, "Well, we've been lucky so far." Mr. Smith no longer thinks Billy is so adorable.